recorded.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this session from Getting on Board as part of our Trustee Learning Programme. I'm Penny Wilson, I'm CEO of Getting on Board. And this afternoon, we're talking about why are charity chairs not more racially diverse? It's a really important topic. I'm really excited about listening to the next hour. Just a few bits of housekeeping from me first. So you will have seen that the session is being recorded. You will get access to the recording. Please note that the recording will also go on YouTube, but the chat section won't be on YouTube. As you've come in, you've been muted. Please stay muted unless Malcolm asks you to ask a question or make a comment. That just helps us keep everything nice and clear for everybody. We've enabled closed captions at our end, so if you need subtitles, you can press the CC button at your end to enable them. Please use the chat. We absolutely love to hear who's come along, which hats you're wearing, what your experiences are of the topic, whether you've got any questions for the panel. So please absolutely use the chat however you'd like to. And then finally, thank you very much to our sponsors. Our sponsors mean that we can offer this session and all of the sessions in this strand free of charge to attendees. So a big thank you to Charisma, Starfish, TPP, Peridot and Diversifying Group. And we've got Rebecca from Diversifying Group this afternoon. Thank you very much for your support. And I'm going to pass over now to Malcolm John, who's chairing the session.
Great, thanks Penny for that very succinct and good introduction. Hello guys, I'm Malcolm John. So I'm going to lead this next session, and I'm joined by two excellent panelists who will be facilitating the discussion alongside with me. And so I'm going to talk for about 13 minutes on who I am and what Action for Trustee Racial Diversity does and is doing and wants to do, and then about the challenges that being a chair from a Black and Asian background and getting to be a chair from Black and Asian background might present. So feel free to start to put your question in the chat, and hopefully question will also arise from the panel discussion with Rebecca and Dina, who I will ask to introduce themselves when we get to that part of the session. So again, welcome on a warm September day. It's much cooler being indoors than outdoors. So I bet you're all glad you're here. So as I said earlier, I'm Malcolm John. I'm the founder of Action for Trustee Racial Diversity, ATRD for short, and now also of the exciting initiative, the Black and Asian Future Chairs Academy, otherwise known as BAFCA, and not to be confused with BAFTA, of course. But I think we hope to end up with much better and more diverse outcomes than our almost namesake. So a bit more about BAFCA a bit later on. Again, thanks to Penny getting on board for inviting me to lead this important event. And thanks also to Dina and Rebecca for agreeing to be on the panel. And I'm sure you'll be hearing much richer pearls of wisdom from them than from me later on. So I'll say something about why I started ATRD, and then why I was delighted to be able to launch BAFCA earlier this year and what it aims to achieve. Well, I've got my air conditioner on in my fan, so if anybody finds it distracting, please wave, but it is needed as far as I'm concerned. Cool, again, it's an apt word. So, Action for Trustee Racial Diversity. I started it about 4 years ago, and its mission then as now was to address the significant underrepresentation of people from Black and Asian backgrounds on charity trustee boards. And to repeat the woeful figures highlighted in the trailer for this event, only 8% of trustees in UK charities are from Black and Asian backgrounds, compared to 14% of the UK population. And that's a 40% underrepresentation, 40, and under 3% are women of colour. So we know that since 2020, the year of Black Lives Matter and the awful murder of George Floyd in the US, that a lot more charities are talking more seriously about changing the racial diversity of their trustee boards. And more importantly, ensure that inclusion is an integral part of that. So I celebrate the amazing work of Getting on Board and the modest efforts of ATRD in providing charities with resources and tools to support them in doing so. So there has been some progress. And the recent research report by the executive search consultancy, Inclusive Boards, which surveyed the top 500 charities by income, evidenced some progress on board diversity. But it also revealed that there is still quite a way still to go, and even more for senior leadership teams. I'm sure that we could all find our reasons why we think progress has been limited, and I hope to hear more from all of you later on. My own unshakable mantra is that diversity and inclusion starts at the top. And that means for me that the makeup of chairs and CEOs must change so that it represents a much wider range of diverse voices, different perspectives, and varied experiences. As a trustee of the invaluable Association of Chairs, which is the membership body for chairs in England and Wales, I was more often than not the only Black or Asian chair in the room at their in-person events before the last lockdown years. Occasionally, there was one other. 3 of us would have been a crowd. We know that Black and Asian chairs exist, but clearly nowhere near the numbers they should be or with the profile they should have. The last survey figures from the Association of Chairs indicated that some 5% of its members were from Black and Asian backgrounds. So let's benchmark that figure against the 14% of people from Black and Asian backgrounds in England and Wales. The chair's role is so important in setting the tone and culture of the organization. So important in championing diversity on the board and key in facilitating internal discussions around diversity and inclusion. However, we can't really be surprised if white chairs who have not experienced the barriers and challenges which Black and Asian trustees have faced on boards, and often as the sole trustee from that background, do not put diversity and inclusion at the heart of their charity. I'll hold my fire at this stage for a panel discussion about the whys, whats and hows of the charity sector and how they might address the racial underrepresentation gap of their chairs. But I'm usually pleased to be able to share what ATRD is doing with our BAFCA program. The aim of BAFCA is to develop a pipeline of future Black and Asian charity chairs. And we intend to do this initially through a 1-year program of support, learning and development for the program participants. We're offering this unique opportunity to existing trustees or former trustees of charities in England and Wales from Black, Asian and other non-white backgrounds. And also to school governors or trustees of public bodies such as NHS Trust and foundations from those backgrounds. We see it as very much a pilot program, not yet fully developed, which will evolve and improve as it takes its course and we take our learning from it. We've set up a separate online space for BAFCA within ATRD Connects, which is our existing peer support network for aspiring and first-time Black and Asian trustees. And to date, some 115 people have signed up. Of them, we reckon about 2/3 are aspiring chairs, and the other third are existing chairs who are willing to offer mentoring and other forms of support, which is a far bigger take-up than I imagined when ATRD launched this initiative earlier this year. And I think my own unprejudiced take from what I've seen so far is that the vast majority of the 80 or so aspirants have the skills, expertise, and passion to be chairs now, or vice chairs, co-chairs, committee chairs, or shadow and apprentice chairs. And charities who are genuinely committed to EDI, looking to fill those roles and opportunities, we would be well advised to get in touch with us. As an aside, a reflection from a recent conversation with a BAFCAite, which I had, is that charities seeking to appoint as chair someone other than an older, retired, or partly retired person or freelance consultant, they need to think seriously what changes they must make to their own governance arrangements to support and enable a younger chair in full-time work to do the chair role effectively. And I suggest that vice chairs, co-chairs, sharing the role with other trustees are things well worth considering. So I look forward to your views and those of our panelists on this. So what outcomes do we expect from BAFCA? We're looking at 3 key outcomes. One is that trustees from Black and Asian backgrounds are more confident about applying for chair roles, that they're more aware of inclusive chair opportunities, and that they increase their chairing and leadership development skills, hopefully, for instance, through their membership of the Association of Chairs, which is another element of the programme. We want to ensure that the design and the key elements of BAFCA meet as practically as possible, and as our resources and those of our partners allow, the individual needs of BAFCA participants, and that it's not just us saying what we think they need. And so to achieve this, we will engage with our participants individually from the outset to find out what skills, knowledge, and support they might need to enable them to become effective chairs. We'll seek to develop on our own or with our partners activities and opportunities which will help to meet this aim. And we'll identify and signpost resources and opportunities elsewhere which BAFCA participants might be able to access. So, as you might imagine, we will draw a wide range of programme elements from the identified needs of participants based on their individual experiences and their professional and personal circumstances. So some of these might include overall advice and support on their journey to become a chair, discounted or fully funded membership of the Association of Chairs. That comes with fully funded access to AOC's ongoing events, networks, and resources. They'll get free printed copies of AOC's excellent handbooks, A Chair's Compass and A Question of Balance, which are actually worth about £40. They'll get discounted or fully funded access to Course 4 Emerging Chairs programme, which runs twice a year. They'll be able to learn from other aspiring chairs and from role models, and specifically get access to a current chair mentor who might be of any ethnicity. They'll get information about chair vacancy opportunities, chair shadowing, practice chairs, or succession planning opportunities. And finally, support for and signposting to specific leadership and development opportunities. So quite a lot of benefits there for people joining the BAFCA program. So finally, I'd like to offer a huge thanks to our sponsors of the program, Shubhani Sen, a full colour consultancy, who pumped fund it this year, Charity People, who are also sponsoring it, the Co-op Foundation, who are our main sponsors, East Side People, and the Association of Chairs, who I've already mentioned. And they've all stepped up to offer brilliant sponsorship support. Finally, let me thank the significant number of existing chairs who generously offered their time and expertise as mentors to BAFCA participants, and will definitely be drawing on their expertise. So that's enough for me, and I'm now going to pass over to the panel, which I will lead, to hear their thoughts, and I hope that you will also engage as part of that. So thanks for listening to this part of the presentation. So I shall now ask Rebecca and Dina to switch off, to unmute themselves. And again, feel free to post in the chat as we go along. And I see there are some things already. And I'm going to ask each of Dina and Rebecca to say briefly about their chair experience and a bit about their journey or journeys there. And then I've got a number of 4 questions, which I will ask each of them, and look forward to hearing their views, and also then opening up to questions from the attenders, from you, the attenders, as we go along, if any are posted in the chat. So again, hopefully it's very interactive, very informal, and with chatting about rules. Apart from the recording, I have to check with Penny how that works. So I should now go straight in. Dina, if I can start with you.
Just to be annoying, Malcolm, it's Dinah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I should have remembered that. So I should now say it again 3 times. It's Dinah, Dinah, Dinah. Thank you.
Many people pronounce it Dina. I answer to most things. But if I have to tell you who I am, it starts off with I am Dinah Cox, OBE, Chair of Devon Community Foundation, ex-chair of Wembley National Stadium Trust, current non-executive director member of Devon Partnership NHS Trust, and chair of their charitable foundation committee. But I am also Dinah Cox of the estates in Brixton, who never, ever, ever thought in a million years she would end up being a chair of anything. So I think it's important for us to see each of us for where we are now and appreciate where we are now. But it's lovely to have the opportunity. So thank you to Getting on Board, and thank you to you, Malcolm, for giving us this chance to talk about that journey and how we got there and why it's important that we want others with us. Don't want to be here on my own.
Thanks, Dinah, for that. And it sounds like an incredible journey, and we will look forward to hearing more about it in the next half an hour or so. So thank you. Rebecca, I'm going to hand over to you now in the same vein.
Yeah, I can't really follow that, Dinah. Thank you. I'm not currently a chair. I'm here from the perspective of a recruiter who works every day with trustees and charitable organisations and chairs. And so I'm kind of here to just say these are the struggles that we see from individuals, and hopefully I have a bit of a perspective from the charities and why they might struggle as well.
Okay, no, thanks, Rebecca. That would be an excellent perspective for us to learn more about. So we look forward to hearing more about that. So I'm now going to go into the first question, and I can address that to Rebecca first,
okay.
Which is, why do you think Black and Asian people and from non-white backgrounds are significantly underrepresented as charity chairs?
It's not a very quick answer, and I think we're probably all going to say different versions of the same, lots of different things, right? I think that there's an understanding that privilege means that BAME individuals, Black and Asian individuals, and mixed ethnicity individuals haven't been offered the same opportunities as you know, those people that are from different more privileged backgrounds than us. I think there is an imposter syndrome from Black and Asian individuals who are not putting themselves forward for certain things. I think there's a lack of talent planning and succession planning and development, and it's just a huge, big, I know we'll go into a little bit more detail on all of those things, I'm sure, in the next half an hour, but I think those are probably the biggest things. that I see on a daily that are the biggest struggles. It's not that the talent isn't there, it's that we just need lots more help to kind of move people up the chain. And as you say, Malcolm, there are Black and Asian chairs, there's just not enough of them.
Yeah, no, thanks, Rebecca. I think that highlights the issues from the supply and the demand side. And I'm sure we'll go more into that as we go on. So thank you for that highlight. Dinah, over to you on that question.
I couldn't agree with you more, Rebecca. It absolutely is. The two things I'd sort of written down for myself were racism and imposter syndrome, and time and energy. And if we unpick a bit of that, I can tell you my story about becoming the chair of Wembley National Stadium Trust. A person gave me a call telling me that they would really love it if I was willing to join Wembley National Stadium Trust as it was being set up. So that would have been about 2007. Because they felt that their board, this was the chair of the board, who I won't name at this moment, but you could look him up if you were desperate. He felt his board was nowhere near as diverse as it wanted it to be. And he said, I'd really like you to join because you're Black and a woman. And then we laughed. No, because I knew him really well. This wasn't somebody being horrible. And he said, oh, and you're also quite good on charity stuff. So we had a bit of a joke about that, but he was really dedicated to broadening out his board, which was all white men of a certain age. And he could see that I would bring something different, as well as my charity skill from my lived experience as a Black woman in London, which is where I lived up until I was 50, to take something to that. Anyway, we roll on a few years. He's going to step down. We have a board meeting and we're sitting there talking about, oh, you're going to leave. We need to get a successor in. I'm saying we need somebody who's a really big hitter. It's an important organization, blah, 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 blah. And he said, yes. And I suggest you do it. And I went, no, I can't. No, I can't. I can't. Chair, no. Then I went to the toilet. I just sat in the ladies' loo and I talked to myself and went, do not be stupid. This is a wonderful opportunity. Get yourself back in that room and say, yes, please. And that is precisely what I did. And I think the idea that racism externally prevents people seeing us as being worthy of those things also feeds into our own internal racism, which means we don't perceive ourselves even as being worthy of taking those roles on. And that links to the imposter syndrome, I think, that we have. So for us to unpick racism in this half an hour is just not going to happen. So let's just shorthand it. Society is racist. So of course, in this, as in so many other things, we find ourselves on the back foot. We find ourselves underrepresented. So that's why I think we are underrepresented in this world.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant example, Dinah. And if I can share my own experience with the BAFCA, when I announced it on social media, I didn't actually expect a big response to issues, the same issue that you've highlighted, but actually it was a huge response initially. It was signing up to saying, yes, I want to be a chair on that grounds. And I'm sure the more we continue to focus and highlight it, the more we'll get. People sign up thinking, yes, I want to be there, but then they don't go to the toilet and other things come into their lives and they think, is it for me? Am I going to be able to get through the barrier? So there is a huge issue about that imposter syndrome and what we can do to support people to get through that barrier. So I'm sure we'll explore that a little bit later on. You touched on why does it matter in your discussions about the Wembley National Trust and the matter from the recruiter, from the charity perspective. Perhaps you could say a bit more now about why you think it matters and why it matters for Wembley and the other charities that you've been involved with.
It's that element, I think, as well, just to go back to underrepresented. Part of why we can be underrepresented is time and energy. Anybody who wants to sign up to be a chair needs to understand it takes time and energy. You can't do it unless you're willing to put in that time and energy. Sadly, again, racism comes into this because many people who are chairs are people like me. I'm going to be 60 in less than a week. I cannot believe it, but never mind. If you're older and you're semi-retired, or as you said, Malcolm, when you're working as a consultant, you can find some time to fit this in. Being we are less likely to get paid employment at a decent level because that we are Black, and I'm using Black in a political sense to include all minoritized communities whose skin colour is not white. So all of us from the Black communities are likely to not be able to find as much time to put into doing these roles. But if we don't somehow or other find the time and the bravery to put ourselves forward with the support that we're going to talk more about in a few minutes' time, then our communities don't get the services they need. Us having lived experience. So in my case, I have lived experience of living in an inner city area on a council estate. I have lived experience of mental health problems. I have now, for the last 10 years, lived in villages in Devon. So I have some experience of what rural areas like, and therefore what some of the communities here face, which is very different to the inner city communities. All of these are unique experiences. The way we live our lives in this country as Black people is very different to the way you live your life as a white person. I am mixed race. From my blood, I'm as much white as I am Black. I have never defined myself as white. I will never define myself as white. Why? Because the way that people perceive me and perceive me from when I was a child is Black. And that has everything, excuse my language, but this is what was said to me as a child: nigger, go home. Every experience of exclusion, every experience of not being allowed to reach our full potential can cause us personal upset, but it causes upset in the community. We need to make sure that our charities are serving everybody. They cannot do that unless those voices are in those roles, especially right at the top of the charity pyramid, ensuring that the issues that are important to us are looked at in detail.
Yeah, so thanks, Darling. I'm hoping that since 2020, it's not just rhetoric, and that a lot more charities are thinking, at least they're thinking about it. But I think that, as we can see from the stats, still not quite hard enough yet. So hopefully this discussion and others will help to move that agenda forward. So thanks for sharing those thoughts. Rebecca, in terms of why does it matter?
Yeah, it matters. I mean, I don't know this, all of the same stuff that Dinah said, but I think there is an element of the charity boards at the moment not knowing what they don't know. And I think that if there's someone on there with diverse opinions, diverse thought, then they have to listen. Hopefully they begin to listen, and then we'll talk about that a little bit more about how they include and have a sense of belonging, etc. in a minute, I guess. But I think it is that diverse thought and lived experience is so important. How can a group of individuals who have not lived through whatever the charity cause is have the right opinions to therefore say this is what we should do for those individuals? It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, and I think there's a whole thing generally about the benefits of diversity, and because I've been on boards where people, they think the same because they're from the same background, and you don't get any creative thinking. You don't get any understanding of the people that they support. And actually, those boards eventually are not very successful. The organization is not sustainable. And until people accept that and realize that, then actually they're not going to drive the organization forward. So again, hopefully that's going to be a discussion about diversity benefits, which I think is great for another webinar around that, and get more people around that table as far as that's concerned. So thank you for those first two questions. I guess moving on to practicalities is what can we do about it? And again, I think I started both ATRD in terms of trustee representation and now BAFCA about chair representation. And I'm always shocked and surprised that this hasn't been done before. And I guess I due from my own personal experience of having been on at least 8 charity trustee boards, where I've largely been the only Black or Asian trustee. I've chaired 1 or 2, and I've been vice chair a couple of times. And again, it's been quite rare. So I'm hoping I can draw my own experience, my own background to support others in this, and that's why I started it. So I'll be interested again to hear from both of you about, from your own experiences, about again why you think where we are now, and what are the top things, priorities that you think we can do, both ourselves as aspiring chairs, but also charities, in terms of driving the agenda forward. So Rebecca, I'll start with you again.
Thanks, Malcolm. I think someone just popped in the chat actually that it's about being really aware of the responsibilities of a chair. And I think that's something that you can help go into my earlier point around succession planning and talent development. I think that's all incredibly important. It's really difficult to find individuals or individuals who want to just be on a board full stop because of the time commitment, the time and energy that Dinah was speaking about. But if you're investing in those people that do want to do it, and you're really engaging with them and growing them as individuals and growing them as board members, then I think that that's really important for them be a pipeline for those chairs, I think.
And I mean, in terms of your from the diversity group, what are sort of specific individual things that any people have said to you? Well, when there's been a chair vacancy and they've approached and said, "Is this for me? Can I apply for it? What support would I get?"
Yeah, so I think the issues that we probably face, and again to Dinah's point, is a time where people in their lives being able to give maybe 50 days a year unpaid is something that is a real issue. And I think there's also an element of lots of organisations, given where we are economically at the moment, there's a bit of someone needing a little bit of experience on how to go through a transformation, or how to do a new CEO search, or how to do anything really. And I think it's very rare for us to have someone come in who's never been a chair before and join an organisation. There are some that are open to that because they'll have a development plan of a really strong board, or they'll be a lot smaller, but that's quite a rare thing. Somebody does need to have some trustee experience, and so you have to look back. We're going back a few steps before we're saying, okay, now you can be the chair.
Okay, thank you for explaining that, Rebecca. Thank you. Diana, over to you.
Yeah, I think that is really key. I was really lucky in a way because someone knocked on my door when I was 24, living on my estate, saying, "We've got a tenants association, this is our newsletter," because this was so pre-social media. So it was a printed out piece of paper. Can I interest you? So I had a conversation with the person. I've always been nosy. I've always been interested in my community. So that helped. And then before you knew it, I was getting dragged into helping with the newsletter. And then I became vice chair of that committee, the Tenants Association committee, eventually. So whenever I'm talking to people, I always encourage any young person that I'm working with, that I'm mentoring, or they're mentoring me, or that type of relationship, or I'm just working with them. I go, if you've got any spare time, find a charity, find something you really love. And I think that really helps, something that you're really committed to, and go and join their board. Because I know as a chair of the board, I am so desperate to get anybody young on that board. But they'll get to learn and develop experience. So exactly as you say, Rebecca, you need that experience before you can become a chair. How do you get that experience? You get that experience by the organisation, Malcolm, that you're setting up, the work that Penny's organisation does. I was privileged enough when I was at City Bridge Trust, which is a London grant-making body, to be able to agree to put some funding into producing how to diversify your charity's board, which is aimed at people looking to diversify their board. But I think there's a lot of learning in that individuals can look at, or people in the sector who are interested in more generally encouraging diverse boards. That can really help focus your mind to think about what you want to do. But I do think self-organisation like you're doing, Malcolm, is absolutely brilliant, because I love the disability phrase of nothing for us without us. So we can do this for ourselves. We can help support each other. We can set up organisations that make that happen, because the pipeline is important. And unless we're encouraging people when they're young to get involved in their local organisations, to get that feel for what it's like to be part of a committee, a board, whatever you want to call it, those are going to be the chairs of the future, because it is very difficult just to step into that unless you've had some experience.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. It's worth saying that my own pipeline, ATRD Connect, which is our peer support network, set up again about 3 years ago. We've now got over 500 aspiring trustees or first-time trustees. And it's from that list, a lot of the BAFCA people have been drawn from. So that is about the pipeline. And in fact, we've just been promoting a partnership with Eastside People, they might know, to support the ATRD Trust Connect trustee pipeline, to support that journey. So Eastside People will be doing the sort of stuff that Penny does around mentoring, around interview coaching, around identifying the right sort of charities. So they're going to work alongside us so that the journey becomes sustainable. And I think that's important, getting allies who can support that work. I think the whole issue around inclusive organisations, there's no point putting a young Black Asian chair into a board which is largely white and which has not got inclusive policies and environment, because actually it's not going to work for them. So I think part of that is about making sure that it's the right organisation. And you know, I'm sure we've all had experiences where we've gone to something as a trustee or chair, and actually have found that actually it's toxic, and we've had to leave. So for me, it's important that the first experience is key. So part of what we really need to do is to make sure that works. I think succession planning, when one of my the existing chairs on BAFCA have said, we're happy to take a chair from your network, and I'm happy standing down in a year's time and put that person in the organisation to start to shadow board meetings and meet and understand the ropes. So I think, and that gets over that sort of imposter syndrome, because they're in there, or they're at the table. I think Fiona, who works with Penny, made a comment about at the table, but are we just serving the food? Which was an interesting thing. And I think it's about actually being the person who creates the food. I think is much more important. So I think there is a lot of stuff that we can do, and hopefully we'll hear more from the attendants of this panel, of this event as well, about their thoughts, and then some stuff already in the chat which we'll pick up. So yeah, a lot of food for thought already. The final question, sorry to use that time. The final question is about what can individuals who want to progress to chair, what can they do to help themselves in order to achieve that goal? And Diana, I'm going to ask you first.
I mean, I think the point I made about taking a role at an early stage as possible in life can be useful, and reading some of those comments, yes, it can be difficult. The application process can be difficult. At Devon Community Foundation, I need to diversify my board, not necessarily from the race perspective, but definitely from the youth perspective and diversity of thought. And as a chair, you probably do have to go through a fairly rigorous process of being selected using standard interviews and cover letters and all of that business. But I think at that earlier stage, getting people involved in your charity, and what I want to do is look at things like having shadow boards, look at things that's like subcommittees, look at a subcommittee, for instance, so somebody doesn't have to commit as much time as they would as a trustee, but it gives them a space to understand how the strategic role of running a charity works, because that's what you are. You're not operational, you're supposed to be strategic. It takes time to learn that. So I'm trying to think creatively from my own charity, using resources out there from people like Penny's getting on board, to ensure that we're giving people opportunities to get that taste of the organisation. So I think as an individual, it's about, one, giving yourself the toilet talk and making sure that any opportunity that comes your way, you don't sabotage yourself because of racism, because of internalised imposter syndrome, and we take advantage of those opportunities that come. I mentor people. So I think, again, if somebody's offering to mentor you, or if somebody's not offering to mentor you, find out where you can get a mentor. Find out someone who is willing to give you a bit of their time and energy and talk through some of the concerns and worries you have and what your aspirations are, and look at your strengths and help you learn how to sell yourself if you have to go through an interview process to get a role like that. I'm a bit of a lefty, so I think, you know, coming together, us all coming together as communities, supporting each other. So by supporting others and others supporting you, that is a way of ensuring that you feel enough strength to take the opportunities that are out there. I mean, I didn't become a manager till I was in my 30s, and it was only other women who I spoke to at the time who made me put in the application, because again, that was another point in my life when I thought, nobody's going to want me as a manager. I didn't even go to university till I was 30. Why would anybody want me in a role like this? And basically, I got a bit of a mental slap from some of the black women I knew, telling me not to be so stupid, and in a supportive way. Get that application in. So talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your bosses, talk to people you know. Say, look, I'm thinking of doing this. Be brave enough to admit that you want to do this and give it a go. Sometimes it's really frustrating, I warn you. Sometimes it's really tiring and you just don't have enough time in your life to get on with it all, especially if things go slightly wrong. But most of the time it's absolutely brilliant. It's really fulfilling. And when you see the direction you can help your organisation go in terms of making sure our community's needs and aspirations are met, it's worth the pain.
I'm so glad you're doing the mental slapping now, Dinah. So that's brilliant.
Get out there, sign up to something.
And I've got you signed up as a chair mentor for my BAFCA group. So thank
Dear
you
heart,
for
I have no extra time at the moment. I really don't. Otherwise, I would.
Yeah, ask a busy person, I always say. So, okay, Rebecca, on that final question, individuals.
Yeah, thanks, Malcolm. I think that to Dinah's point, the networking, utilising your network and having someone here to kind of champion you and support you and give you a mental slap is probably really, really helpful. I think if you can, and I maybe would say this, but if you can use an agency, a recruitment agency or a recruiter, that can be really helpful. We take a lot of the heavy admin and help a lot and go through cover letters with you, and sometimes, well, for us anyway, for organizations that we work with, we don't have massively long application processes. It's a cover letter, it's a CV, it's talking to me. It's a really kind of simplified version of us trying to help you. And I know not everyone can Emma said hooray. I know not everyone all organizations can afford to use agencies, but for us at Diversifying Group, even if we're not working on a role with you, if you want our help, we're more likely to kind of just go, yeah, sure, let me help you, let me see if I can take a look at your cover letter or give you some pointers on your CV, because we are genuinely just trying to, you know, change the world and ensure that there's better representation on board. So we'll help if we can. I think that's really important. And to Dinah's point again, yeah, just get stuck in, just do whatever you can. If you can do the stuff from getting on board, or you can shadow someone, or you can do anything where it's the school governor or join one of your things, Malcolm, I think that's really important. You can join a board without having board experience. You just need to show them that you understand what being a board member entails, so that you know it's governance, you know it's regulation, you know it's strategy. You just need to prove that. You don't need to say, I've got experience of being on the board. So just start somewhere.
Great, no, thank you both. I think it's been a totally energizing discussion, and I've enjoyed listening to both of you, and I've learned a lot of stuff myself as well. So I'm going to thank you both for your thoughts. And it's gone ever so quickly, I have to say. And yeah, I wanted to leave some time for people to ask questions. And there's a lot of stuff in the chat already, but what I suggest people might want to wave initially to voice any thoughts, questions, and there's one hand. And then we'll go to chat again to pick up stuff people are raising in the chat, or feel free to raise yourself what you raise in the chat. So without more ado, I should go to Audrey first, who's raised a hand, and ask her to speak. So thanks, Audrey.
I managed to unmute myself. So hello, and it's a delight to be in such esteemed company, Dinah and Rebecca and Malcolm and indeed and Penny and others on the call. And I was just saying I was resonating with Dinah's point about it was almost by a happy accident. And I'd put a comment in. I thought this was a bit like Twitter. You just have to take it as it is in terms of the application process. So I'm actually speaking as an experienced trustee. I was on 2 small rural charities, but that was very much through my work in the natural environment sector, which has some diversity problems in its own right around recruitment. So that's another story for another webinar. And I found that because I'd made some connections, those individuals came directly to me. So I kind of had a hotline and was almost headhunted. And what I'm interested in is, and my comment was really reflecting that, was from Rebecca and Dinah's perspective, or indeed yours, Malcolm, or anyone else on call, what do you do if you haven't even worked out whether you're interested in this as a pathway? Because what we're talking about is very much, we're singing to the choir. So for me, the elephant is in the room is, before you get to the barriers around access, where are those opportunities, however you find them, recruitment agencies or someone knocking on your door, the imposter syndrome, you and your own communities are holding yourself back, the visibility, we need to see it to be it, and the application process, which is how the devil do I fill this in? I think I'm interested, but what is it they're looking for? Once you've got past all of those, that's great. But how do you get to a stage where you even recognize you have some value to contribute? And I guess that's the critical thing for me, because there are a lot of people I know out there that would fill every board post and chair post from here to eternity. You talked about mentorships and you talked about the pipeline, but what about the people that are still yet to recognize the value they can contribute? And how do we reach them? Because if I hadn't been approached directly by 2 charities purely because of the work I had done professionally with them, they spotted me and thought, she's got a good brain, and they thought, and we need some diversity. So I pushed aside the tokenism for a moment and thought, actually, I have something to say here, let's jump in. So the door was open, the choir was singing to it, but I'm really critically interested in, how do you reach the people that have yet to realise they have value to add?
Yeah, it's a great question, Audrey. I'm going to ask Dinah to comment on that.
Yeah, I think if you look in the chat, Mukesh just said about getting a role based on skills. I think, as I was saying earlier, think about something you love, think about something you're really good at, and that's what you should pursue. And I think it's beholden on us to let people know that this type of thing exists. So I think things like going into schools, catching people when they're young to say that this is an option, that if you have these skills and you have these abilities, you can use these in this way, and why you might want to do that and what the satisfaction is one gets from doing that. So yeah, to recruit somebody just because they're black, that tokenism thing, I absolutely know. There was a board I sat on, who shall remain nameless, but this was many years ago. I was on it for 6 months, and it was so evident to me that they had not done what Wembley did and said, we need a black woman, as you're describing, Audrey, the idea that we do need a bit more diversity. So that is part of what we have to offer. But the reason that they really want you is because you've got the skills to do it. This organisation didn't care what skills I had at all. All they wanted to do was tick a couple of little boxes. One said black, one said woman, and that was it. So I left. But I still think, yeah, getting into schools, talking to people when they're young, so they realise that it's an option, that they can use these skills. I mean, probably we're all just a bit of an idiot, so, because we're all doing it for no money. It's like, but you get so much from it that it is worth it, honestly.
Yeah, thanks, Dinah. Rebecca, is there anything you want to add to that question?
Absolutely. I mean, we get it a lot from the candidates that we speak to for roles, because we're reaching out, we're looking for skill sets, right? That's what our purpose is for our job. So we're just seeing who can do what the role that they're looking for. So we have a lot of people saying, why would I want to be a trustee? What does that mean? What is that even a pathway? Is that something I can do? Like, I'm under 50, are you sure? And stuff like that. So we're just saying, actually, forget about all of that stuff, and actually I'll tell you what a trustee is, but also what's your skill set? You can add a lot of value, and if this happens to be something that you're passionate about, you'll get a lot out of it as well.
Yeah, and I think my experience was actually yours, Audrey. I mean, I was, through my professional job, I was contacted to join the board. and I hadn't heard about trusteeship before that. And I think there's a lot of work to do around raising awareness of charities and of trusteeships. If you ask anybody, you walk your local Primark and say, what's a trustee? Nobody would actually answer that question. So I think there's work to be done there. And I know that Getting on Board is doing a lot of brilliant stuff in that area. I mean, Penny, I don't know whether there's anything you want to interject quickly on that.
Sorry, Malcolm, I had my eye on the chat. I'm not on the...
That's fine, move on. There's a lot of stuff in the chat. So anybody wants to ask anything they raised in the chat, otherwise, then feel free to do that. The people who've chatted, if you want to wave to raise the point, we're happy to take that. Otherwise, we'll go through the chat and highlight it ourselves. So, okay, there's nobody waving yet. Wave. Okay, let's look at the chat then about some of the comments we've got. I know, Diana and Rebecca, any chat points that you've picked up you want to bring up?
I'm trying to read. I'm multitasking.
Can I help Malcolm by saying that, just drawing our attention to Kashaf's comment? He said, where unconscious bias exists on boards, particularly those that are majority white-led, how can this be addressed to remove barriers preventing a lack of diversity on boards? That's a big question, isn't it? We need about 12 more webinars for that one, at least.
It's a good question. I'm happy to ask my panelists. Diana, first, there's something you want to pick up?
Sorry, I was reading and not listening properly.
It's about unconscious bias. If it already exists on boards, on a majority of all white boards, how do we change that?
No idea.
Well, I'm happy to, from boards I've been on, and I won't name them, there were a lot of different views around diversity on larger white boards. A lot of it was ignorance and not understanding.
Yeah.
So the first thing is having that discussion, honest discussion about where you are, and bringing somebody in independently who can foster that discussion. There's no point starting it yourself because you start from the wrong starting point. So I think that's the first point, and being honest about that discussion. And there's no right answer, but just getting it out in the open. So for me, I think that's the starting point.
Yeah, for sure. I think we have a diversifying group. Lots of organizations come to us, and we're very, very lucky in the sense that they are already on their journey. They understand we're not having to force them. So we also do, we have a D&I consultancy piece, and we do training on unconscious bias, and we do that with clients who are looking at recruiting for their board as well. So for us, we're quite lucky. They're already there, and they know that they have things to change, and they're being led by either the chair or the CEO or a collection of individuals. So we're quite lucky in that regard. But when we do call it out, if they haven't realized it yet and we're getting to interview stages, we are saying, listen, maybe there should be someone from our organization there. Maybe we need to kind of check and balance what your interview questions are like and how come it's not worked in the past, etc., etc. So for us as an agency, obviously it's a slightly different experience to what Diana's probably experienced.
Yeah, I was sorry, that didn't come across very well. I just couldn't sort of think in the moment.
That's absolutely fine.
But I do think is that level of honesty is really important at a board about any issue. If you can have, which I hope I have with my trustee. So as chair, one of the things I've introduced into Devon Community Foundation is 360-degree reviews. And I was very pleased. I gave all my trustees options to have a chat with the vice chair. It's because one of the questions is, do you think there is anything I could do differently? But none of them took that option. All of them were willing to tell me to my face what they thought about me. And I've learned from that process. So last year, I think the word that they might have been trying to say, but saying quite politely, was bossy, that I can be a bit bossy. So this year I've endeavoured to try and speak less at meetings or whatever, or give people a little bit more room. So all organisations have to develop, and that's part of your role as a chair, that level of transparency and openness within your trustee group so that you can deal with issues like this. Because unless you are able to open that box and say, we've got a problem here, how are we going to tackle it honestly? then you're not going to ever tackle it, honestly. And the problem with unconscious bias is that people don't realise, obviously, that they're unconsciously biased. So it's how you highlight that. And again, hopefully you have a chair who knows when to go out and get external organisations to help facilitate or access resources to help the board to go through that journey and take those steps, as Rebecca's described quite well.
Thanks, Diana. We've got one hand from Mikesh, which I think will be the last question before I hand over to Penny, just to round up. So, Mikesh, if you'd like to unmute yourself, if you can.
Yeah, I've unmuted myself, and
Excellent.
I've been listening very carefully to everything you've said. I just thought I'd throw a wobbly in.
Great.
I went for not an interview, but I'd already been selected by the NEDs to take on the role of a subsidiary chair. I already am a chair for one other organisation and a vice chair for another. However, what happened is that the board selected me, and then on my way home, after I'd met the MD, I was told that I didn't gel. Mind you, the board was all white, and I happen to have a standard London accent, well-spoken, all the qualifications you would want, worked in the disability environment, have a lived experience, but the MD didn't want me. How do you deal with that? Do you go to the race relations board or somebody like that? I don't have a clue, because it just seems that extra glass plates are being put in there. You're invited to apply. You tell them that you're disabled. You still don't get an interview. And when you do get the interview and you get selected, the executive team turn around and say, no, we don't want to work with this person in 15 minutes. Now that just doesn't equate. So I'm trying to understand, since you brought up lots of topics, where do you go with a situation like that, where the board has selected you, but the executive board don't want you? And you've never met all the executive board except for one person, the MD.
It sounds like an awful situation, Vikesh, and you have my deep sympathy as far as that's concerned. I've got
any suggestions?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know, Dana or Rebecca, do you want to offer some thoughts on that?
I think there's been various points about feedback in the chat, and it might be worth trying to get feedback from the organisation to find out why or what those issues were. Yes, I've heard about how, and I understand that at senior levels, chairs and directors, the chief executive officer, have to gel and have to find a way to work together. But as we were saying right at the beginning, this world is racist. This world is ableist. So it can be really, really difficult to get somebody to admit to that. And at that stage in the proceedings, as far as I know, there is no legal thing you could do to try and challenge that decision.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I think the only advice I would give is try and get some feedback. They may not give it to you, and that may be just really, really difficult to take. Obviously, like Dinah said, the relationship between the CEO and any non-exec or chair is vital and really important. But if they're not giving you anything that you can take constructively away from it, that doesn't seem particularly fair. So I would, try again to get feedback. Willing.
My very quick response is around joining inclusion within the organisation. So the learning from that is for anybody looking to join a new organisation, be really clear as to how inclusive it is, and whether it's for you. So that safety, personal safety, I think is really important. But thanks for sharing that, Mikesh. And again, feel free to come back to through Penny by email or whatever if you want any more advice on that subject. I'm sure we'll be happy to do that. So I'm going to thank Rebecca and Dinah very much for their really valid, insightful contributions. I'm going to quickly hand and attendance for raising some good stuff in the chat, which we'll keep and pick up. I'm going to hand over to Penny quickly to round up for the last couple of minutes. So thank you, Penny.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Malcolm, Rebecca and Dinah, and attendees. Really, really interesting discussion. I felt like there's so much to say on this important topic, isn't there? I posted a link to our evaluation form in the chat. So attendees, please tell us what you thought of this session. There's also a section in that evaluation form for suggestions of other sessions. So if there's other things you would like, then do let us know. If it's about the racial diversity of trustees, then it might be Getting on Board. It might be ATRD, Action for Trustee Racial Diversity, that picks it up. But between you, we'd really love your suggestions. And then just a plug really for Getting on Board's other support. So we have free guides, including how to diversify your charities board. Action for Racial Diversity has a guide as well. I've posted links to both in the chat. This session is part of our free trustee learning programme. I've posted a link to that in the chat, so please do check out other sessions. We've got all sorts coming up, and we have a whole strand for aspiring trustees as well. We've got a session coming up on could you become a charity chair. We've got a session coming up on co-chairing as well, which was mentioned. So yes, all sorts of interesting stuff as part of that programme. And then really a final thank you to the sponsors who through their support we can make this free. So thank you to Charisma and Starfish, TPP, Peridot and Diversifying Group. And we've got lots of recruiters mentioned tonight who are really genuinely supportive of trying to get a wider group of people involved in trusteeship. It benefits all of us, doesn't it? So it seems like a no-brainer from where I'm sitting, if only everybody agreed. So thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a really pleasant evening.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.